Looks like we are to me.
Oh,
got a lot there.
We are now live. The satchel is now live. And this is what we do. We never tell them ahead of time that we're going to broadcast, but we do it anyway just to see and this is a bonus. I don't think they know we're recording on a Monday. So
they should know to always have the alerts on for BGP 333 because you just never know when you're going to get something, especially you. You kind of you get a wild hair and you're like Saturday afternoon, just got done mowing the grass. Let's talk about some stuff.
Hey, there's nothing that settles me down after doing some yard work than just getting on a live stream. Come on, let's go. Do it. Let's do it. So, all right. So, Charles, I know you probably got the satchel.
Got the satchel tuned up, dialed in. I guess first question we got going on here is: would you give up your firstborn to be one of the 2,100 for Thursday night's game? Excuse me.
I wrote no.
You wrote no in the satchel.
I wrote no in the satchel. I responded, love my kids, would do anything for my kids. I would not sacrifice my kid for going to watch a football game. But it does speak to the severity of, I think it was who is this, John Mercer? Is that who asked that?
From Ty Clement. My apologies.
Ty Clement.
Did I mention that? I thought I did. At least I did.
I might have been making that up in my head. So Ty Clement, I'm sorry, Ty. It really, he's thinking about it. He's thinking about giving up his kids. I hope his kids aren't listening.
What if you could take your kid, but then you had to leave at the game?
Leave during the game?
Yeah, no, like you risk your firstborn, but you get to take your kid to the game, and then you just leave the kid.
Risk in terms of like COVID?
No. Nothing to do with that. Just at least you have one last 3-hour moment with your firstborn to watch a football game, 3.5 hours, and then in comes Child Protective Services or something like that. And, it's over.
As long as it's a social worker that I can outrun, then
right.
Yeah. Then I'll do that.
All right. Moving on.
What about you? Didn't answer. What about you?
Yeah, I can't. That's probably not gonna. That's not gonna be good. Steve Pennell. You want me to answer? I'm gonna say no.
There you go.
Stephen Pennell, what are your thoughts on how the team will 3-week hiatus and how Ark State will come out after firing of their defensive coordinator? That's very interesting. I mean, we've mentioned it here before. We've touched on it earlier in this episode quite a bit, just a little. And man, it's something that's definitely on my mind. I'm absolutely concerned to see how this team, do they come out firing on all cylinders? If you had to make a bet, you're probably thinking no, just because of what they've had to deal with for the last 3 weeks. And it's not like we were practicing for 3 weeks, or 4 weeks. We were doing nothing for a very long part of it. We were just, we were able to practice on the first possible day to make this game happen on Thursday. So to me, it's definitely something you've got to think about. And, there'll be some telltale signs early on, whether, they've got everything and they're ready to go and they're geared up. And if they have to, knock off some rust or something like that, that's certainly something that I think a lot of people will have an eye on. And then, of course, to add to all this, the defensive coordinator, we're probably going to talk to a little bit with Kara with this, is that, it's something that had been brewing down there in Jonesboro. And to think that they won a game and still just did it, it really makes me think there was a lot of other things going on down there in Arkansas. We may get some insight to that soon, but man, that's something else to think that, those, not just like a defensive coordinator. I think there's another guy, like a safeties coach, just gone.
Mm-hmm.
And they came up 500 yards 3 times in the season. And really the game where they looked the best was Memphis, which was the best team. I think that the hardest part about this for all of what the Red Wolves have to swallow is the fact that this was Georgia State and Coastal, just absolutely just Swiss cheese in that defense, and it's interesting. Certainly, I'm sure they'll play with a little bit of fire. They'll play their new guys, new calls, and all that good stuff, and it'll be interesting. But what's your take?
I think this is by far and away the biggest barrier. This 3-week, essentially 2.5 week, 3-week hiatus of just not practicing is the biggest barrier that App State football has had to overcome in season since I've started following the team. I really,
absolutely. In season,
I really do. I think this is not something that the casual fan can just brush off and say, well, you're supposed to do this. You're an athlete, blah, blah. I think this is unprecedented. I mean, you're talking about taking a fine-tuned machine. And I say this every week on this during this COVID world or whatever. But you're taking these guys that are used to regiment and routine and process, and then you say, stop, don't do anything. And you got to count. Listen, guys feed off energy off one another. They're working out next to each other, trying to, compete with one another, trying to beat each other. And they're like, how what's your PR? What? Run faster than the other guy. That stops for 3 weeks. Okay. And as talented as I think our team is, I do think they're talented, as great of a head coach as I think Sean Clark is, and a great leader of men that I think Sean Clark is, and I do think he's a great leader. That is an unprecedented barrier that, by the way, we don't know how that's going to shake out because we've never experienced it. These players have never experienced it. But, I mean, this is like losing Armani Edwards for weeks and worse, in my opinion. It's worse.
Yeah, I mean, you can take anything that we've been through in the past. Some people will say, well, look at these 3 opponents we're playing in a row. And that's nothing.
Yeah.
That's what those guys want.
And
or 3 road games in 4 weeks. That's what they that's what they look for. They look for that competition or that obstacle. Yeah.
Yeah. And they're taking reps, and they got this practice on this day, and we're doing this on that. And they're going film meetings, practice, workout, right. And then they don't have it. And then they don't have it. And then not only that, it would be different if Arkansas State was going through something similar, but they haven't been. They've been playing.
They had one postponed game. That's it.
Yeah, they've been playing. So I just think this is huge. I think I said this a little bit last week. Do I have faith that this team and these players that that we support so much, could they beat the brakes off Arkansas State? Could they? Yes. Is it a huge disadvantage to just have shut down practice for 2 or 3 weeks? It's massive. And I'm not trying. And Charles, I think you know this. I hope anybody that's been listening to the podcast for the last 6 seasons knows I'm not making excuses. We've never made excuses. But I'm just going to have to call a spade a spade. It's an enormous barrier that our team has to overcome. I think they are more than capable of overcoming it. But reality is what it is. It's kind of like, Charles, if someone doesn't go to the gym for a month, does that make a difference? Yes. Now, hold on a second. I just use a gym. I'm not saying these guys weren't working out. I'm not saying that. Okay. I'm not saying
we don't know that.
We don't. Yeah. Well, but my point is, when you take a routine, you take it away for a certain amount of time, and then you go right back into it.
You ain't there. You're not 100%.
Yeah.
You're not walking into 100% athletic perfection there, all tops. And not just condition and fit, but rhythm. I think that's the biggest part, is just the rhythm of everything. So
Yep.
That'll be discussed a lot more for sure going forward. Nick Gord, when can we be sure that the game will be played? Personally, I'm thinking not until the ball is in the air, and even then, I'm not sure. I think we've probably, in all honesty, this is Monday. We've probably cleared the hurdle. Mm-hmm. Is there a possibility that something comes up on Wednesday and we have a couple positives? Sure. And then you got to trace them and all that good stuff, and you see where you are. But I don't see that happening. I hope it doesn't happen. Obviously, if you've been paying attention to the App State coronavirus dashboard, which is a really healthy tool, we certainly had a spike in early October, and since then it has fallen dramatically. It's good to hear, and it's a good trend. So hopefully that's the way it is. I think we're there. Once we had this first thought of postponing a game or two, I was like, well, the target's Arkansas State. If we don't play Arkansas State, then we're going to have some real issues. And we don't have a very limited season and all that good stuff. But at least the governor's going to let a couple people get into the game and all that good stuff. But I think we're going to have it, Nick.
I do too. I think we're going to have it. I'm like you. I think being here on Monday, I think right now, I don't have like intimate knowledge about this, but I think these dudes are trying to like limit how exposed they get out and about in order to play. Right. They're preaching that pretty hard. And frankly, freaking A, I mean, how many of our players have been exposed or been in contact or whatever? I mean, come on. I mean, at some point we're going to run out of guys that have gotten it, at some point. So, I mean, maybe that, I don't know. Maybe that plays into it. I don't know, but I think
Or-
I think we'll have a game on Thursday.
Yeah, and all you got to do is look at that dashboard.
Yeah.
And nobody's really talked about it a lot, or if they have, it doesn't. It kind of gets glossed over. But numbers in the high 70s, 78 or 79 of people who were involved with programs. So, I'm not a coronavirus expert by any stretch of the imagination, but that does seem like to be the majority.
Yep.
So that's an encouraging sign. There was joking around back in the summer about, hey, and all these cases started popping up across the country, like, yeah, we should be having college football, and it's like, no, now's the time to get them. If you're going to get it, but we'll see.
Yeah, we've definitely seen some. Not to get too off track here, we've definitely seen some takes this summer in the season. Of just super Charles. One thing that I think could be said about both of us is we try to be optimistic about stuff when it comes to app sports. We got to try to be optimistic, and man, we have seen some just dude,
and that's for a different world.
Yeah.
It's a different time. It's 3 years from now when we have all the history behind us on this thing. So
yeah, for sure. Yeah, for sure.
We move on. Jason Hutchins asked a concession question. If Big C isn't allowed in the game, will he pay someone to go get his third quarter nachos? I might have to. Pay somebody. I'm actually curious about concessions. I don't think you're going to have many out there. Would Marshall do two bottles of water in, and then of course, or someone did that. But actually, Marshall had several other concessions open. But North Carolina's different on it. What do you think about my nachos? You think I'm paying somebody for nachos from the top of the hill if I can't get in?
No, I think we're going to get in, Charles. I think you and I are going to sneak in like in Navy SEALs. I think we're going to be inside the confines. Don't ask me how, but when Doug Gillen was blowing up that bedrock to install that big scoreboard in 2017, he let us know of a tunnel, and we're not going to tell you about it.
Nice.
We're going to army crawl in there, and you're not going to even notice. There's going to be a big trap door that's going to open, and we're going to make our appearance. So don't worry about it.
Can I walk in first? It's kind of hard, claustrophobic.
It's a slide. So you start at the top and you kind of slide.
Okay.
Yeah. It's going to be like one.
Good deal. Ryan Holtz, lead-in question there. How many fans will join me from watching outside the fence?
We'll wave at you.
There's going to be a few for sure. Last game against Campbell. Last game against Campbell, they were, there was a picture on TV that's people up the fence, and they said, hey, just wear your mask or whatever, and they allowed it. But, at Charlotte, it was raining, it was different. But there also seemed like they were going to make sure no one was out and about doing that stuff. And it felt like we tell them not to do it once, they'll listen, right? No, that's not really how it works.
Yeah.
But Hotzi, we'll be out there with you somewhere.
Yeah.
Or we won't. We'll be looking at you from the inside.
Yeah.
Any comments to that? You going to be there? Are you coming out the mountain regardless?
Charles, we're going to be at that game. We're going to be at that game. I'm telling you. Whether we have to parachute in, maybe Tim Randall can take us up in a helicopter. I don't know.
Somebody's got something. I don't know, man. Jay Neal, Coastal Kentucky beats ULL and cracks the top 25. Could this be the year that the Sun Belt could see two teams ranked at the same time?
Yes.
You think it's happening? Okay.
When you have two major conferences not playing their games right now, it's possible.
But that's about to start soon.
Yeah, so it would have to be but what I'm saying is if it's going to be a year where two Sun Belt teams are ranked, it is this year for sure.
Time. Okay. I'm curious. I'm curious how Coastal handles this.
Same.
This is obviously something that has been a bugaboo for a lot of Sun Belt teams. The first time they get in, a couple weeks after that, quote unquote, they can't handle it, and it's a curse and all that.
Yep.
And maybe it is, or maybe it isn't. Maybe it's just circumstance, and you get lucky, and your schedule works out. You got a few games in front of you, and you win a few, and it makes sense, and you get that opportunity because somebody else loses. And with the people not playing right now, that's obviously a lot to do with it. So two at the same time, though, I don't know. That would mean they would have to continue winning, and then someone else in the league would also have to continue winning.
Right.
And look better than they have. It definitely sounds weird to say, and I've seen people say this and broadcast watching football this past Saturday that Coastal's what was it? What was the word they used? The class conference, and I'm just like, golly, guys.
What conference? Say it again.
They're the class of the conference right now. I'm telling you, I've seen it. Seen it from this, broadcasters who are actually, not, high tech artists and stuff like decent, seasoned broadcasters who say class of the conference, Coastal Carolina. So very, very interesting to me.
Yeah, I've said for a while, really, since I found out Jamie Chadwell was the guy that beat us coaching Charleston Southern back in 2013. Whether you like it, it just seems like he doesn't have a ton of fans up here, but I think he's a good football coach. It's kind of like I've always kind of thought Billy Napier's a good football coach, and that's kind of turned out to be the case. I think they
have a different offense that you have to depend on like a 1 week's notice, and I think that's really most of it.
Yeah, well, but also if you get guys, and we've seen this, Charles, with App State, making the turnaround that it has, in the last 7 years, or, transitioning. If you get enough guys believing that they're good, they become good, and this is why it's going to be interesting to see how Coastal handles the ranking, because I think there's a lot of pressure that comes on that as like young men. They have this, they are in the top 25. They wanted to play for a top 25 program when they got recruited, and they went to Coastal and where you weren't really expecting that. No disrespect, but I'm just saying it plainly. You don't expect to be ranked at Coastal, but you are, and no one can take that away from you, and you're winning, and you wear out a P5. Yes, it's Kansas, but hey, touchdowns are touchdowns, man. And so they've had this string of success beating one of the best teams. Obviously I'm biased, but one of the best teams in the conference, beating them in Louisiana. I mean, at some point that galvanizes a roster, and they say, you know what? No, we're good. We're a good team, and we're going to
believe it.
If you believe it, then that's power. There's power in that. So, is this the year that Coastal actually, they don't just have like a string of good games? They show flash. Right. Is this this year they actually sustain it? I think it's completely possible, if not likely, that they finish this year. Obviously, what does that mean in 2020? What does finishing a year mean? But I think it's likely that they are a really good football team. The class of the conference is strong. I don't know if they beat Louisiana if they played them again tomorrow, but hey, man, hats off. I mean, and I know there's another question coming up about this, so I'll save it. But yeah.
Cool. Steve Brooks, how big a factor is the football team's success in having other Sunbelt teams trying to raise their games and then the conference getting more notice in the rankings? And that is what it's all about, because for the longest time in the Sunbelt before we were here, you only had to be so good, in my opinion. There was they were like, all right, if you can go to the New Orleans Bowl 4 times in a row, you can be 8-5 or 7-5, and that's considered you're the best team in the conference. Mm-hmm. Or you can be like Arkansas State, and they won a string of conference championships in a row, and but couldn't get over the hump and have one of those spectacular seasons or magical seasons, or beat the P5s that they should have knocked off, and that was considered enough. That was safe. That kept you employed and all that good stuff. And then I think we raised the bar, certainly. Steve's in a good point here. There was a difference in what the expectation of good was once we started doing the things. Winning our titles in a row and bowl games and P5s and all that good stuff. And so all that does is it helps us, because eventually when you're talking about recruits, you're talking about coaches, you get tired of hearing about it. You get tired of hearing about whoever the king is. Troy had their run. Arkansas State's had theirs. We're having ours. Hopefully that continues. And eventually someone's just tired of hearing about you, and they want to beat you. They want to be the person at their school that turns it around and gets recognized or something like that. So that time's coming. It's we can't win conference titles for the next, for the rest of our lives. Not gonna happen.
And by the way, and no one really likes to talk about this, but it's not fun to be the giant in a room full of children. It's not.
No, it's not. No,
it's not. So, and again, and I think tragedy is part of growth. That's why we hurt a little bit when we think about our best seasons, but we hurt when that one bad loss comes out. Everybody knows what I'm talking about in the last couple of years.
Yeah.
So you don't want to be a giant, the giant fish. You don't want to be Jaws, in Watauga Lake, right? You want to beat people that are comparable to you. We talk all the time on BGP about peer institutions. We want to be great among peer institutions. People that are playing with the same deck of cards that we are, right? Between $25 to $35 million budgets. Sorry, but that's part of it. And similar size, similar track record, similar infrastructure, because we want to see, hey, when the cards are on the table and we are playing with similar resources, we can beat you with those resources. And App's bragged about that and done it and executed on it forever. But you need that other person to want to beat you so bad they can taste it. You need that in order to be great. You do. You have to have it. So, someone like, and you understand. So, staying on Coastal for a second, Jamie Chadwell is quarterback at East Tennessee State. So, no love lost for App State for Jamie Chadwell, right? And we talked about, Charles, you and I talked about this when we were in the SoCon. The target on the back is a real thing at App State. It's a real thing. Teams want to beat App State every single time we play them. We are so many teams Super Bowl. And going back, you could talk about Paul Petrino talking in Idaho. We spent 20 minutes of every practice on beating App State, still couldn't beat them. So the Sun Belt, it is not a coincidence that the Sun Belt is experiencing over the last 5 years, half a decade, growth in talent and in quality football opponents, because they're looking at exactly what you said. They're tired of seeing App State, or like Louisiana. You say Louisiana the last couple of years. Kind of like we were tired. What did we hear when we came to the Sun Belt? Oh, you're going to have a tough time beating Arkansas State and Louisiana.
Right.
We didn't like that. And so that's how that works.
Marshall, what they did, how they celebrated by beating us, a
100%.
ranked team, Gatorade on the coach.
Yeah.
We've seen that so many times when teams beat us, that it's a massive celebration, and it's the ultimate sign of respect. But man, does it hurt?
Yeah, it does, and that's what makes you better. And if Coach Clark can't go to the team and say, "Look, look how hard they're celebrating because they beat us. They're throwing Gatorade on the coach." I mean, this is how bad guys want to beat you. If you don't want that to happen again, you have to work harder. You have to be better. And that's what we want. We want that. We want other teams to be good so that it raises our game. Because that's what if we want to sustain this,
we got to be challenged.
We have to be challenged. So you take a snapshot of the Sun Belt in 2015 and the Sun Belt now. I think it's night and day. From the quality of opponents, the players, the coaches, the whole landscape. I mean, Georgia State's a threat. Hello, Georgia State is now a threat. It's no longer a given when you see Georgia State up on the screen checking your scores that Georgia State's just going to get railroaded.
No, it's not. They can beat you. If you
it's
play
a
bad,
great. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Take away two teams. If you play bad, somebody can beat you any Saturday.
Yes, correct. And it's never been a better time, honestly. Like just from a fan of Sunbelt football, which we inherently are by virtue of being App State fans. It's never been a better time in our fandom, so the last 6 football seasons, to be a Sunbelt football fan, because it really is. You're like, oh, okay, hold on a second, this team's stepping up a little bit. That they're and you can't say that like for the last 2 years we've definitely been kind of like keeping a side eye at Louisiana, but now it's putting a side eye at Coastal, putting a side eye at Louisiana, putting a side eye at Arkansas State. They've had their struggles with defense, and we know that. But the point is, we're not sitting here saying, "Oh, there's no way they'll beat us." It's just fun. It adds an element of competition. Iron sharpens iron, that kind of stuff. It's great. But yeah,
eyes ahead, no side eyes. Eyes ahead to the prize, which is from Taylor J. Adams. Do you expect this Arkansas State defense to be better or worse after firing their defensive coaches? And I think the important part is how are you going to measure that? A team that's been giving up tons of points and tons of yards. All right, what if they don't give up tons of points and tons of yards to us, but they still lose or something like that? Is that considered being better? I mean, you're talking about a team like Last week, Georgia State was without their running backs and just threw the ball all over them. Had some injuries. That's going to do more than likely. We're going to try to establish the App State identity. So does that play into them or does that play against them?
Yeah.
They fired their defensive coordinator. They didn't fire their run game defense coordinator or something like that. They fired their safeties coach. It wasn't like they fired their defensive line coach. They've always had a defense that prides themselves on a little bend, don't break, see if you can get turnovers. It's kind of Drink style as well. And that's kind of what they hope for and what they live for: sacks, interceptions, all that good stuff, turnovers. We got to make sure we take care of the ball. Perfect at that this year, so that's important. So it could be as much them as us. The matchup, who knows? I think that's a lot. There's a lot to be. I think it's a great question because I don't think we're just going to know immediately with Arkansas State. I'd expect them to be a little bit better.
If not, it depends on the dynamic of whether, I hate to say this, and we're going to learn a lot more when we speak to Kara here in a little bit, Kara Ritchie. And we haven't recorded with her yet, by the way, so maybe we'll get some extra insights here by the end of the show. But I think it depends on a couple of things. If the core group of players, maybe the leaders they didn't really like the DC, or that he wasn't, you know what I'm saying? Like, you ultimately have a guy you got to buy into what he's doing, right? So when you talk about John Law when he talks about like Coach Woody, when we had him on and him talking about like we believe what he was, you know what I'm saying? So like maybe there's an element of that. Maybe the guy just, I don't know. I mean, the defense clearly was pretty terrible enough to fire your like top strategic mind for the defensive side of the ball in the middle of the year. To me, I couldn't fathom that personally. Like, even if you didn't think your guy was doing a good job, you really think you do a better job replacing him mid-season when that's such a huge hire? Like when Drink was hired, we were all like biting our nails, like, who's he going to make defensive coordinator? Because that's not just something that you just, I'll just make that guy defensive coordinator. So like, off the cuff, I would say maybe going through some controversy. Maybe a lot of these guys did like, these guys being the Arkansas State team, maybe they did like this DC and they hate that he's gone, and maybe they come together even more and maybe they have a spurt of a better performance. I don't know. But to me, if you're firing the guy that's in charge of being like your defensive brain, because Blake Anderson, he's an offensive guy. He was a quarterback. So if you're bringing in now this guy to like say, hey, you're the strategic guy behind our defensive schemes in the middle of the year, I guess Blake Anderson thought that they would get better by firing him, or else they wouldn't have done it, right? Doesn't that make sense?
I think that's the idea there. But to me, another interesting part about this is this guy hasn't been around very long. Like, Arkansas State had to replace their entire coaching staff outside of Blake Anderson the season before last.
Right.
And so this guy was a friend of Blake Anderson's, and had coached with him in the past, but it wasn't like he's been around forever in this stint. So that's a good point. Short leash there. I mean, obviously, season before last, Anderson was told, you got to make some changes, or he was told, by an athletic director or something like that, like, hey, you need to really clean house and change these things up, get this thing going. Not that they were bad, they just weren't where they wanted to be. They couldn't get over that. And now here we are. They're looking at starting over again. And this is after last year when Blake Anderson was rumored for P5 jobs. Yeah. This is just it's the roller coaster here as far as what's going on in Jonesboro to me. I find it very interesting.
Yeah, they gave up 52 to Coastal, 27 to Central Arkansas, which I think we'd all have a heart attack if we gave up 27 points to. But
that's a rivalry game for that state.
All right,
that's because Central Arkansas beat them a few years back, and so
they did.
It's kind of a thing. And Central Arkansas went from like Division II to FCS. So they've made their investments as well. So
that's fair.
It's kind of like a Western, kind of like a very Western-esque, if it were to us or something like that.
So the lowest amount of points that they've allowed this year is 27.
Right.
The lowest. And look, it's not really good. So, and obviously, if you're the head coach, you're like, hey man, I'm firing my DC in the middle of the year. I mean, that sends some signals. I mean, they didn't take it. Look, watching that that Georgia State game did not. There are no excuses to be made. Terrible defense going on.
Yeah, on both sides, absolutely both sides. Arkansas State's got offensive talent and all that, but man, you did not expect a shootout with Georgia State passing the ball by any stretch.
No, you didn't. So it'll be interesting. But if I had to answer the question, I would say worse.
Yeah, last one in the 3-3-3 club for Brad Manning. Given how many yards their defense has given up, will we see a more balanced attack this week, or do we continue to feed our backs? We've got enough depth to keep them fresh. I think we're still going to try and do what we do because we haven't really done it right yet. I think they would, especially considering the pause, that we've had. I would just be really surprised if we saw a completely different offense this week. That would be not what I expect at all. I should just, Arkansas State, if they're smart, they stack the box and they bring their safeties down, do all the things you're supposed to try to do to stop at, but then we always catch you snoozing one way or the other, leaning the wrong way, and I think that's the key to it. But seriously, I mean, we need to establish who we are, and whether that's giving the ball 15 times to 3 different backs or giving it to 30 times, we'll see.
And ultimately, if you can do something really well, it doesn't really matter if they know it's coming, right? So, yeah. So if your muscle memory or what you're really, really good at is something that you can do pretty much in your sleep, I'm not saying that we can or whatever. Yeah, I'm with you, Charles. I mean, you would think logically, unless I'm just completely missing something about game prep, that you would go back to what are we really good at? What can we pick up and do really, really well right now versus let's try to add a wrinkle after 2 or 3 weeks of inactivity and play to their weight. Like, what can we do? What do we know we can do really, really well? And we know what we could do well. So yeah, no, I'm like you, man. I don't think we're going to see anything new. I think that we're going to do with what we can do well. I think that has been a bread and butter for Coach Satterfield all the way up to Sean Clark at App State, doing what we do well. Obviously, Drink was a little, he did some different things and obviously worked. But I personally like the approach of what are the assets that we have? How are they best utilized? And I don't know. I think that's probably where we go.
You got to lean on the big boys. That's the guys who's gotten us through several seasons. The backs of the benefactor of the offensive line be a beast. So that's what I'm looking forward to. So that's into the 3-3-3 club on that end. AJ is going to dial into the Twitter real quick. An email satchel in the Twitters.
No email, which is weird. No email. So we're gonna go in here. And actually, it's funny. It looks like there are 2 333 club members that are submitting on Twitter. So we're spreading the love here. So
whatever is easier for you.
Yeah, that's right. Michael Burt here. Again, he's one of the members. He said, "This is a top to. This is top to bottom the best Sun Belt has ever been. What are our chances of somehow sweeping the belt for the first time?" Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
I can tell you right now, I don't, just based off what we're dealing with on a health perspective, that if someone goes 8-0 in the conference, you can just say that somebody got an advantage that other people did not. As they were able to play all their games, it didn't have pauses, and they had the best rhythm. They may have not had the best team this year. Yeah, they had the best build situation going for them. Right. Yeah. And then at the same time, I can sit here and say, look, this is if everybody has a problem at some point, like you're going to have some, like everybody in the conference being 4-4, 5-3, 6-2, and it's like who can just survive, and get through it. And we may not have any more 12-1, 13-1 type of teams out there, but at some point, someone's going to win the East. Somebody's going to win the West. They may not be the teams that normally have. And we may have a new champion this year in the Sun Belt. I'm not saying I don't think we don't have the talent, but we got to see it first. We haven't shown it.
When we heard rumors of Jacob Huseman running tight end routes or whatever it was, that should have been the wake up call for everybody. Like, this is not normal. This is
Right.
before the Campbell game. That's what I'm
Right.
referring to.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it was funny, just an analogy or an example of how I think about 2020, and I think everybody's just going to look back at this year, 2020, as a different type of animal. The year we didn't play the freaking NCAA tournament or the Masters in April. I mean, just a bunch of weird stuff. Yeah, we in my household last night, we tuned in to watch Game 7 of the NLCS between the Braves.
You had to bring it up.
I know, I'm sorry, but it's pertinent. So my wife says, "All right, so like, what's the deal? What's the all right? It's Game 7." She said, "Okay, so whoever wins this game will go to the World Series." I said, "Yeah." She said, "Yeah, but at the end of the day, I mean, this is kind of a weird year. Is it really going to count?" Like, yeah, that's kind of what she's saying. I was like, yeah, but that's true for everything going on in 2020. Like, everybody's going to have in the back of their mind, not that you didn't win it, but everyone's going to kind of have this like mental asterisk next to their accomplishment and say, yeah, but just weird. It's not even like a bad thing. It's just kind of like a note. Everybody's kind of got in the back of their head, like, yeah, it's kind of weird, wasn't it? It's
Right.
it's kind of a weird thing, wasn't it? But I mean, Michael's right. I think in terms of just quality teams that could go out and beat somebody, not even like a conference matchup, but obviously we've had a lot of out of conference victories. I think this is probably, not without doing a ton of research, the most talent that I've personally seen experiencing the Sun Belt. But kind of like what Charles said and what kind of the example I just used, I just unfortunately think that if someone were to run the table, even if we ran the table, I think it'd be hard to say like, yep, and that's the way it happened, and everything was good. Everybody played, on an even playing field or whatever. It's just going to be kind of those, glad we did it, happy we did it, but it's just weird. It's just going to be a weird thing because
you're not going to base anything in 2021 if it becomes more of a normal year that we're used to, and we're over this, and say, well, in 2020, this team was the class.
Yeah,
I you're just gonna. I think you're just gonna kind of skip over it.
You could probably do that to like 70% power, right? You could probably do that a little bit, but you can't go the full,
right?
The full deal. Yeah. If things get back to normal in 2021, let's say, and someone runs the table, but in the Sun Belt like we did, it'd be like, oh yeah, well there you go, we ran the table. If you did it this year, it might be a little different,
right?
Not trying to crap on our guys at all.
Or anyone.
Yeah, or anybody who does it. Yeah. This kind of, I think we're all in the same boat here in this weird, like, when the chief question that we all have is like, who's positive? I mean,
we got our focuses in different areas, and we're not thinking about football as much as we are other things.
Right. Or like, yeah, it's just different. So, someone's going to re-listen to these episodes like in 20 years and think, what in the world? What was it like in 2020? These guys keep every week talking about different. It's a wild time. It's going to be historical. Okay. So Dave on the Twitters, do you see the Fun Belt somehow making the road to the championship? I'm sorry. Do you see the Fun Belt somehow making the road to the championship not come through Boone in December? Do I see it somehow? Yeah, I mean, I see it somehow. Yes.
There's certainly a path for somebody.
There's a path. There's a path for somebody. Again, and every time we talk about this, it's not to say that I don't think that our guys can't do it. I just think, is there somehow a chance that it doesn't happen? Yeah. I mean, so far,
if it's going to happen.
So as we sit right now, as we sit right now, we have had to postpone 2 conference games that were rescheduled in December, 4th or 5th, and then whatever the one was at 12th. Yeah. All right. There's like no more wiggle room for like when we can reschedule a game. So even if another team another opponent that we play or whatever, like we're kind of just out of luck. We're out of, so who knows what happens. So I think there are a lot of different ways that it could happen, but I just think the rules are different. But I still subscribe to this, folks. Like, if you're going to come at the king, you best not miss.
Right.
There's no reason to think App State's still not the cream of the crop. I mean, come beat us. Like, to be the man, you got to beat the man, to quote the philosopher Ric Flair. I just believe that very much.
I always wonder if we have, as you get to the end of the year, some games aren't played. one conference team plays more conference games than another.
Yes.
And say, for instance, somebody goes 7-1, and then somebody goes 5-1.
Yes.
But the 5-1 team beat the 7-1 team. Who gets in?
Right. Yeah.
How do you reward? How do you not reward the team that won 2 more conference games? I mean,
yeah.
if Sunbelt ain't thinking about that right now, they better start.
Yep.
Because that's a situation that can certainly occur, in my opinion.
No doubt about it. No, I totally agree with that. Matt Williams asks, am I the only one who thought Big C's voice was attached to AJ's vocal cords and vice versa? Basically, he's saying he thinks the fat guy has the deeper voice. I think is what he's saying.
Well, yeah, my chords are deep in depth. So
yeah,
the air's thinner up here. It just sounds different.
I don't exactly sound like I'm huffing helium, but next to you, I think I do. It does sound like I'm a little more high pitched. Well, I am compared to the baritone, the bass of Big C. I don't know. I don't know. No one's ever met me and said you look different than your voice or whatever. I mean, so I don't know. We'll go. I think everybody that's met Big C is like, oh yeah, that's Big C. It's got to be Big C.
Yeah, there's certain things that you're like, it kind of comes to the territory. You look at it, I guess, from another person's point of view, and think, yeah, that's can't be missed.
Well, I think being 6'6" helps with that.
Right. Yeah.
I think so.
I don't think people hear the voice and they're like, whoa, that like get whiplash and they're like, hey, that voice.
That's right. Chip Buckwell, who's another 333 Club member, says, what are you most concerned about the game Thursday coming off essentially 3 weeks off? To keep it short, sweet, I'll say speed. Speed's kind of concerned me. I think I mentioned this at the Campbell game. I think our speed on defense a couple times was lacking. There are certain ways to still work on that and gain your speed during a downtime, I guess, if you put in the work. But I'll just say flat out speed.
I like that answer. More of I'll think of it a different way, like mental speed, like processing what you see in front of you. And be able to react quickly off that, not necessarily athleticism to an extent, but recognition of things when you haven't seen them live in a long time.
Yep. Yeah, it's a good answer. And rounding out the hashtag BGP mail satchel is Fake Fan Joyce, aka at Fake Ethan Joyce on the Twitters. And he's actually got, usually he was asking extremely inappropriate questions to the satchel, but he's actually kept it G-rated, dare I say, for the submission. He's taking, I guess, the spot of Danny Stapp here, closing out the satchel. He says, where do Ark State fans fall on your list of most annoying fan bases? And this is kind of a sensitive question now that we're going to toss to our conversation with Kara Ritchie, who's an Ark State fan. And by the way, Kara's not annoying at all. So I'll just go ahead and say that. And I think Charles will probably do that as well. Not in any way, shape, or form. We wouldn't have Kara on the show if we thought she was annoying. We think she's great. But anyway, where do they fall? I still say this, Charles, and I'd love your analysis as well here. To me, as beating the same drum, man, I think UNC Charlotte fans are the most annoying.
Oh, yes. If we're going to compare them to everybody else, yeah, that's up there. You're not. I mean, like we've said in the past, they annoy us when we realize they're around again because we haven't played them with the as often as we have played like Louisiana.
Yes.
And so it's kind of like, I remember these guys.
Yeah, right.
For instance, I saw one of their guys who was pretty popular. At least online, and he wrote a little blog piece about us and this upcoming game. And it's short, but 2 mental errors to do just bad errors about who we played. That Charlotte was still. I mentioned that Charlotte was FCS, and I don't know how you can do that. And then also thought that we were still in charge or being led by Eli Drinkwitz, which is just an aberration. It's like, are you paying attention at all to college football in the last few years, or the last few weeks or months? But it comes with the territory. We know who they are. It's part of it's because they're They came up here and they beat us, and they act like that game was Super Bowl. Like just like anybody else's was, and they rode that result for a very long time. So,
years.
Yeah, and they're still talking about it. They're literally still talking about it. So
yeah, Georgia Southern is the obvious answer, but it's kind of funny. Georgia Southern, their fans is like the sibling you really don't like, but you got to live in the same house with them, so you learn to live with them. Arkansas State is like the cousin. You see them for Thanksgiving, Easter, and Christmas, and you got to get along with them. You don't like them, but you do have to go.
You got to fake it,
UNC Charlotte is like that friend that's friends with like your group of like a member of your group of friends that you grew up with that friend. And you really don't like him, and you really aren't obligated to like him either. You got to be cordial. But you're like, God, come on, what are we doing? But you're around that guy a lot because he's with your friends, and his friends like, hey, he's my buddy from growing up, or I went to college with him, so he's that's how it is. So like, even though I think Georgia Southern is, there's so many more that we interact with Georgia Southern, and so many more that follow. Like there are so many Georgia Southern fans that will even like they'll listen to the podcast, which is weird, and they'll follow us on Twitter, and they'll chime in every now and then. It's like, why are you following us? Like, why are you talking to us? I don't talk to Georgia Southern accounts. I never did.
I've never had the interest.
Yeah. Anyway, but Arkansas State, I would say their cousin status, like in terms of annoyance, like we don't obviously haven't interacted with them a lot, but we do coexist with them being in the conference. But man, when it comes time, and this is the other thing that I think really sucks about 2020, we should be having a lot of banter right now. I mean, we're recording this on a Monday. We should be having a lot of banter at this point with Arkansas State, and we're not. Yeah, and it's because
it's hard to do that in this economy, as they say.
Yeah, well, yeah, and it's because so many people are worried about things that are stupid, like, oh, what are your tests, and what are contact tracing, and blah blah blah. That's taking our eye off the ball and having fun. And I hate to say it, like I could say that because I don't have to deal with it, but it just seems like the game has almost become secondary, and I really hate that. Like playing the game has almost become primary. Winning the game has become secondary. I don't know. It's been really like in terms of like for trash talk and banter, it's been a really crap year.
It's for the athletic departments. I mean, they know that these games have to be played so they can get some people in, and they can like revenue is not lost, and they can still get their TV money and all that good stuff. And so yeah. So it's all important.
It is. So thank you to Styles Roofing for sponsoring the hashtag BGP Mail Satch. We're going to wrap that up now. Again, you can contact Styles Roofing, call or text Billy Styles 704-842-1874. If you are in the greater Charlotte area, you got some roof damage. I got some shingles blew off my roof. I got a leak here. Do not hesitate. I have personally worked with Styles Roofing, and I really was blown away by the service. And they're a great sponsor, and I encourage you to look into that if you have roof damage. 704-842-1874. Call or text. But for now, we're gonna wrap up the satchel. Actually, I'm gonna go ahead and log off on in the broadcast here. Bye, everybody.